Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the annual International Conscientious Objectors Day ceremony. Welcome to those of you here in Tavistock Square, London, and welcome to those joining us online. My name is Michael Mears. I'm an actor and a playwright. This event is organized by the International CO Day Group, which is a coalition of 13 peace organizations. International CO's Day was first observed in 1982, and the Conscientious Objectors Memorial Stone behind me was unveiled on May the 15th, 1994, by the English composer Sir Michael Tippett, who'd been a conscientious objector himself during the Second World War, being sentenced in 1943 to 3 months imprisonment for his conscientious objection to military service. This ceremony has become an annual event on May the 15th, and once again this year we're live streaming it. You can find the live stream by visiting co-day.org. If you're watching online, please join in the YouTube live chat, maybe let us know where you're watching from, and please share the YouTube video on social media, both live and afterwards. And if you're on Twitter, please use the hashtag CODay. So to open today's ceremony, we're going to start with an inspirational song written by Sue Gill Murray. And if you've been to this event before, you'll probably recognize it. Please feel free to join in the words on page 2 of your programs. Sue will be joined by the Raised Voices Choir.
Yes, please do join in. I have one confession. As somebody who wrote this 20 years ago, I ummed and ahed in the 3rd verse about whether to say pin their faith or pin their hope. And some of us have got faith and some of us have got hope. I don't mind which you sing. The choir will probably sing hope, but that's okay. One, two, seven.
Let's make it mine, but move the camera. It's easier than moving out.
Yes. 1, 2.
As people walk, there was so that fear, like people. Can't be safe.
Thank you, Sue, and to the Raised Voices Choir. Now, in planning these events, we're often aware of how the role of women can be overlooked, because although there are women CEOs in some countries, notably Israel, in most countries, women are not conscripted. But of course, women play a huge part, not only in the support they give to conscientious objectors, but directly as anti-militarist activists themselves. We're therefore very pleased to have with us today Ali Ronan, who is a feminist historian from Manchester and who has been researching the role of women in supporting conscientious objectors. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you very much. It's a very humbling experience for me to be here, so thank you for inviting me. In 1916, in the middle of the war, and in the year that the Military Service Act was passed, Sylvia Pankhurst wrote in her newspaper, The Dreadnought, throughout Britain, throughout Europe, the women must win. No, the women will win, and they will say, no more war. On this International Conscientious Objectors Day 2023, let us remember some of the anti-war and pacifist women of the First World War who supported and helped conscientious objectors and their families. Women who have been largely unseen, unheard, and overlooked. Let us remember the mothers, the sisters, the daughters, the lovers, the sweethearts, the wives, and the friends of those men who refused to fight. Let us remember the women who raised money through a network of underground committees across the country to support the often isolated and ostracized families of the conscientious objectors. Let us remember the women who kept the small provincial branches of the No Conscription Fellowship going throughout the war. A fellowship conceived and imagined by Lilla Brockway, the often forgotten wife of the more famous Fenner Brockway. Women like the Quaker Agatha Watts, whose sons were CEOs and whose daughters drove ambulances at the front line. The socialist Frances Melland, who went to work for the League of Nations in Geneva. or the suffragist Dorothy Smith, whose brother-in-law was killed at the Somme, a pattern that was replicated across the country. Let us remember the women who sang outside the prisons, who campaigned tirelessly for the men to be released, who handed out anti-war leaflets. Let us remember the women who mobilized the anti-militarist Women's Peace Crusade, which spread like wildfire across the country in 1917 and 1918. Women like the rent strike activist Helena Crawford from Glasgow, fancy weaver Lydia Leach from Blackburn, Gertie Ingham from Nelson in Lancashire, Elsie Winterbottom from Oldham, amongst hundreds of others. Let us remember the women who were arrested, fined, or who lost their jobs because they held anti-war convictions. Miss Cornby, a teacher from Oldham, sacked because she was seen at meetings like this. Local councillor Margaret Ashton from Manchester, removed from the Education Committee, or ex-suffragette Lillian Forrester, fined for concealing her husband, like many other wives or sweethearts across the country. Let us remember some of the women who were given short, sharp prison sentences. Lillian Wolfe from London in 1916 for writing an anti-conscription article urging men to go on the run. Phyllis Skinner and Maud Hayes from Manchester in 1917 for handing out anti-war leaflets to new recruits. Joan Beecham and Edith Ellis from London, both imprisoned for their work on the Tribunal, the newspaper of the No Conscription Fellowship. Annie Pimlott from Stockport in 1919 for anti-war speeches. Let us remember these women and all the others who were prepared to put their lives on the line and who believed, as Phyllis Skinner wrote in the Manchester Conscientious Objectors Journal in November 1918, that, as we believe today, it is our duty clamorously and unceasingly to agitate.
Thank you very much, Ali. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Semih Sapmaz, who is the Right to Refuse to Kill program worker of War Resisters International. As part of his work, he campaigns for the rights of conscientious objectors across different countries, including Turkey, Colombia, Israel, Greece, South Korea, Ukraine, as well as others. Semih is going to speak about why it's still so important to campaign for conscientious objection today, giving examples from Russia and Ukraine. Thank you, Semih.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Ali, for sharing the inspiring stories of women peace activists and conscientious objectors. Today, I will try to tell you about how we can continue supporting conscientious objectors with a specific focus on what's happening in Ukraine and Russia at the moment. Unfortunately, we meet May 15th with an ongoing war in Europe. It has been more than 1 year since the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. Every day, more and more people are dying, suffering from war, resources are spent for military purposes, ecological damage is real, and the nuclear threat is increasing. Another reminder to us, war is a crime against humanity. But how to stop this war? Definitely not sending more weapons, which does nothing but fuel the war even more. As War Resisters International, We believe conscientious objection is a tangible way of achieving peace. The protection of human right to conscientious objection is even more crucial in wartime. Unfortunately, this is not the case in the war in Ukraine. Not only Russia and Ukraine blatantly violate this right, but also many countries in Europe and elsewhere turns a blind eye to the protection of conscientious objectors. If conscientious objectors face prosecution and persecution in Russia and Ukraine, then those objecting war need asylum and visas from other countries who claim to stand for peace. Today in Russia, there are thousands who are facing prosecution only because they stand against war. Where there are reports of hundreds of soldiers and mobilized civilians who object to get involved in the war and are illegally detained in the Russian-controlled areas of Ukraine. In Ukraine, where the right to conscientious objection has been suspended, we receive reports of imprisoned conscientious objectors. If we are genuine for our call for peace, we have to support those resisting war. As War Resisters International, with our international allies, we work closely with Ukrainian pacifist movement from Ukraine, movement of conscientious objectors from Russia, and our house from Belarus to seek how we can support them. One outcome of this collaboration has been the Object War campaign. In September last year, we jointly initiated the Object War campaign, which addresses the European Union to take action for the protection of those resisting to take up arms. As part of this campaign, addressing the EU offices, we ask them to grant protection and asylum to deserters and conscientious objectors from Russia and Belarus, to urge the Ukrainian government to stop persecuting conscientious objectors to military service and to guarantee them a full right to conscientious objection, and to open the borders to those who oppose war at great personal risk in their country. This week in Brussels and Berlin, our friends will be delivering almost 50,000 signatures we collected from across Europe to the EU offices with accompanying actions. There will also be an action in London today at 3 p.m. in front of the offices of the delegation of the European Union to the UK, organized by our friends, Payday Men's Network. We will be there as WRI, and we invite you all to be there with us. Object War campaign is just one example of how we can support those war resistors in Russia and Ukraine. There is, for instance, another campaign in South Korea by our friends World Without War, which is to support conscientious objectors from Russia who stuck in the Seoul airport for months. My point is that one concrete way of supporting is pressuring our governments to open their borders for those resisting war with great personal risk. As we meet here in London now, we also need to ask what our government is doing or not doing to protect those war resistors and what else we can do about it. With this occasion, let me also tell here that in June 16th to 18th, we will be hosting activists from Russia and Belarus in London to discuss what else we can do to support them. It will be part of a public conference called Anti-Militarist Roots, and it would be great to have you all with us to have this discussion together with them. Thank you all for listening to me today.
Thank you very much, Semih. Now, this isn't the only event for CO Day being held today. We've heard that there are also CO Day events in Leeds, Leicester, Liverpool, Manchester, Wokingham, Sheffield, and Edinburgh. Just want to ask, is there anyone here today from another country, by any chance? Oh, hello. Where are you from? Australia. Welcome. United States. Italy. Ah, benvenuto. I'm half Italian. You can tell it's a bit rustic. Good. And is there anyone from another continent? Well, you've answered that. Australian. Well, we're very pleased to have you here today. Now, we're going to have some more music. Raised Voices are going to perform a piece called Foolish Notion, which has been written by Holly Near. And the chorus is in your program. So please do feel free to join in. Raised voices.
Let's get over this side. We need to turn that off, don't we?
Is that off?
I don't know.
Is this turned off?
It should be.
So can you move it to the middle of us then, please?
I think it should be just turned off.
I'll do it. Thanks. Thank you very much.
To the middle where? Where do you want
Just
to?
about there, just about there. No, that's lovely. Thank you so much.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Brilliant.
And thank you very much to Reagan for conducting this, because then I don't know it so well, I can concentrate on singing. Thank you.
Tenor.
Beautiful to know that beautiful. What a beautiful. That forest holy road. Brings from the same. What's his name? It's full of pride. That the army will. But does he ask himself one by one day? To show that what a it's not that forest holy road. When we wait for it's done for me. It's bring on the say the same. What Lord and what's his name? It's been justified, but when will he try? For never he loved to show. And war is holy road.
Many thanks to the Raised Voices Choir. I'm going to move this microphone back. Is that okay? Is that about right, Jeff? Okay. I'm checking my phone for a reason connected with this event, so
Don't believe it.
you'll find out shortly. So, as Semih made clear when he spoke to us, there's clearly an urgent need at the present time to uphold the rights of conscientious objectors in Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. Now, our final speaker today was going to be the Belarusian peace activist Olga Karach from the Our House citizens organization, which Semih referred to. We were hoping she was going to send us a message about the situation faced by CEOs in Belarus today, but due to, I'm not sure, technical issues or whatever, the message hasn't come through. But instead, we have taken a few statements and extracts from the Our House website, and I'm going to read them now as soon as I can master the technology of my phone. There we go. So these are taken from the Our House citizens organization in Belarus. On February the 24th, 2022, Russia attacked Ukraine, including from the territory of Belarus. Belarus did not formally enter the war against Ukraine, but Alexander Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, publicly supported Russia's aggressive actions. So far, Belarusian troops have not crossed the border with Ukraine, but there's a clear understanding in Belarusian society that sooner or later, Moscow will force Lukashenko to send an army to Ukraine to fight on Putin's side. Now, due to all the events related to this war, Belarusian authorities have been paying increased attention to military conscription, as well as increasing the number of military conscripts. While on the other hand, more and more Belarusians themselves are actively avoiding conscription and military service. Article 435 of the Criminal Code of Belarus criminalizes evading military service. Now, overall in Belarus, the number of criminal cases related to evading both conscription and military service hasn't been publicized, as this is classified information. However, it's known, for example, that in 2022 in Minsk, 79 persons were prosecuted for these offenses, most of them for evading regular call-up to active military service. And these people received various penalties. These are the demands from the Our House organization. 1, there is no system for more detailed and in-depth monitoring on rights violations of Belarusian conscientious objectors and deserters. Our House is the only human rights organization that tries in one way or another to organize monitoring of criminal cases against those who evade military service. 2, more international attention and support is needed for those Belarusian men who do not want to join the army, because today, their conscientious objection is the only serious deterrent for Lukashenko. The large numbers of people evading military service significantly reduces Lukashenko's possibility of sending Belarusian soldiers to Ukraine to fight on Putin's side. 3, we also need support infrastructure for Belarusian conscientious objectors and deserters, as well as support for an information campaign about the situation in Belarus and in the Belarusian army. Those are the extracts that we've put together from the website. You can obviously look for Our House organization online if you want to learn more about the situation in Belarus. Right. I'm now going to switch my phone to airport again. We've now come to the point in our ceremony where we read out the names of a number of conscientious objectors. Today, it will be 85 names representing conscientious objectors from all around the world and from all periods of history. Some of you will find a name tag on your flower, and when the name of your CEO is read out, please do come forward to lay the flower by the Conscientious Objectors Memorial Stone behind me. So now I'm going to ask Sue and Barbara to come forward and read the names. Thank you.
Algeria. Soufiana Babu, imprisoned in 2011 and has since disappeared. Angola, Emmanuel Matondo, a recent CEO. Argentina, Christian Lassalle, one of 5 who made a public presentation of conscientious objection in 1993. Armenia, Vahan Bayatyan, imprisoned for 10 months in 2002. Armenia, Nagorno-Karabakh, Areg Avanesyan, imprisoned for 4 years in 2005. Australia, Charles Edward Martin, imprisoned in 1970. Austria, Josef Moises, imprisoned 5 years as a disobedient soldier in World War I. Austria, the Anschluss, Franz Jägerstätter, beheaded in Berlin on the 9th of August 1943. Austria post-1945, Christian Schwarz was refused CO recognition in 1989. And Azerbaijan, Samir Husseinov, imprisoned in 2007.
Belarus. Valentin Goulet, objected 2000. Belgium. Jean van Leerde, imprisoned in 1950. Bermuda, Rod Atreides Sterling, finally recognized by the Court of Appeal in 1996. Britain, Connie Bolam, the first woman imprisoned as a conscientious objector in January 1942 in Newcastle. Bulgaria, Kostadin Angelov Kalmakov, imprisoned in 1986. Canada, R.G. Brooks, imprisoned for 8 months in 1946. Chile, Javier Garate, publicly declared themselves as a conscientious objector in the early 2000s. China, Zhao Zhadong, arrested for publicly burning his military uniform in 1989. Colombia, Soy Diego Carifoniera, the first objector in 1993. Croatia, Tiomir Campanello, objected in 1999.
Cyprus, Greek, Theocharis Theokli Theocharidis, imprisoned for 2 months in 1991. Cyprus, Turkish, Murat Kanatli, imprisoned in 2014 with the loss of his civil rights. Czechoslovakia, Thomas Krivanek, imprisoned in 1986. Denmark, Lauritz Larsen, refused in 1962. Egypt, Michael Nabil Sanad, first recorded CO, imprisoned for 3 years on the 11th of April 2011 for insulting the military. Eritrea, Negede Teldemariam, imprisoned continuously since 1994. Finland, Kai Raninen, total resistor in the 1990s. France, Louis Lecoin, pioneer CO who was imprisoned in 1917. Georgia, Kakaber Galashvili, imprisoned for 16 months in 1996. Germany, August Dickmann, executed at Sachsenhausen on the 15th of September, 1939.
Germany, East, Gunter Frisch, imprisoned 1965. Germany, West, Christoph Basenwein, imprisoned in 1986. Greece, Michalis Maragakis, imprisoned for 26 months in 1988. Hungary, Wagner Sosons, imprisoned 1986. Isle of Man, Harold Lilly, imprisoned 1916. Israel, Hillel Rabin, 56 days in military prison for refusing to serve in the IDF in 2020. Israel Druze, Salman Salameh in military detention, 2002. Italy, Pietro Pinna, a pioneer conscientious objector, imprisoned in 1949. Japan, Shuji Hayarama, attempted to refuse orders in World War II. Kazakhstan, Roman Greco, 6 months imprisonment in 1994.
Korea, South. S.H. Choi imprisoned for 18 months, released in June 2022. Kyrgyzstan, Dmitry Shukov, detained in a psychiatric hospital in 2001. Latvia, Roman Pinero, objected in 2000. Lithuania, Karolis Podenas, imprisoned for several long terms from 1936 onwards. Netherlands, Jacob Finghier, imprisoned for 3 years in 1950. New Caledonia, Gilbert Vaya-Limoa, imprisoned for 4 months before recognition of conscientious objection in 1989. New Zealand, Garth Ballantyne, transported to Britain, then France, sentenced to 5 years imprisonment and mistreated in 1917. Norway, Nils Smitsand, imprisoned in 1970. Paraguay, Pablo Maria Angelo Guanes, one of 5 in a public CO presentation in September 1993. The Philippines, Lagman, who objected in 1966.
Poland, Dariusz Maciek, imprisoned for 1 year in 1993. Portugal, Paulo Milomens de Matos, objected in 1977. Puerto Rico, Philip Howard, arrested in 1949. Rhodesia, Richard Nottenbelt, imprisoned for 5 months in 1977. The Roman Empire, Maximilianus, beheaded Tavistock, North Africa, the 12th of March, 295. Romania, Alexandra Tion, 5 sentences of 2 years each from the 1920s to the 30s. Russia, Vadim Nazarov, imprisoned for 12 months in 1998. Serbia and Montenegro, Dragoslav Dolcic, objected in 2005. Serbia, Kosovo, Agron Koraj, resisted the Serbian call-up in 1990 and the pressure to join the KLA in 1998. Singapore, Edrens Promes Ramos, his 2nd term in prison. Expected release was February 2023.
Slovakia, Martin Bednar, imprisoned for 1 year in 1997. Somalia, Saeed Mohammed, imprisoned 1984. South Africa, Richard Steele, imprisoned for 1 year in 1980. Southwest Africa, Rashid Ruinasi, refused in 1987. Spain, Jose Luis Pepe Beyonza, imprisoned in 1971. Spain, the Basque Country, Alberto Estefania, imprisoned for 4 months in 2000. Spain, Canary Islands, Rafael Valayon, imprisoned for 1 year in 1993. Spain, Catalonia, Francesco Montenegro, imprisoned for 2 years, 5 months and 1 day in 1995. Sweden, Per Johannes Klasse, Alternative Service, 1980s. Switzerland, Josef Benz, imprisoned in 1950.
Taiwan, Shi Ming-tae, imprisoned 1986. Thailand, Netawit Chotiphat Faisal, declared himself a conscientious objector on his 18th birthday in 2019. Turkey, Halil Savdan, imprisoned for 21 months in 2007. Turkmenistan, Kurban Zakirov, sentenced to 9 years in labor colony in 1999. Ukraine, Vitaly Alkasiko, 1 year imprisonment, the sentence for refusing the call-up in February 2023. USA, Tina Garnanis, a Native American medic who left the military in 2004 after witnessing horrors in Iraq. USSR, Chechnya, Anatoly Zhuk, detained in a psychiatric hospital in 1988. USSR, Estonia, Erkki Luik, the first political conscientious objector, 18 months forced labor in 1989. USSR, Kyrgyzstan, Andrei Bil, imprisoned in 1984. And the USSR, Moldova, Nikolai Ryzhkov, imprisoned in 1986.
USSR Russia, Dmitry Algunov, distributed leaflets explaining objection in 1985. USSR Ukraine, Sergei Oznach, 18 months forced labor, 1991. Venezuela, Rafael Uzcategui, objected in the 1990s. Yugoslavia, the former, Ljubomir Petric, imprisoned for 8 years in 1963. And the latter Yugoslavia, Boyan Alexov. He was discharged from the army as, quote, mentally unstable after refusing to fight in the civil war in 1991. Thank you.
If anyone else has a flower they'd like to come up and lay on the stone, please do so. And feel free to name any other COs you may wish to acknowledge. Many thanks to Sue and Barbara for reading those names out. One of my recent plays looked at conscientious objection in World War I, the struggles of British conscientious objectors against military conscription. The play was called This Evil Thing, which was a phrase used by Clifford Allen, who was the chairman of the No Conscription Fellowship and a conscientious objector himself, who served very punishing terms of solitary confinement. This evil thing, referring to the act of military conscription, to the act of compelling people to kill against their wishes, against their principles. This evil thing clearly, as we've heard today, is still present in the world, and we still have to strive for the rights of conscientious objectors. So I'd now like to invite everyone to observe a minute's silence, and perhaps bearing in mind the words on the memorial stone behind me, which is now beautifully covered in white carnations. To all those who have established and are maintaining the right to refuse to kill. Their foresight and courage give us hope. Thank you. If you want to keep in touch with news about conscientious objection, do look at our website, co-day.org, where you can find more resources and information. And I'm just going to remind you of the date for your diary, which Semih gave us earlier. Next month, from the 16th to the 18th of June, War Resisters International holding a major conference in London called Anti-Militarist Roots, with visitors coming from all over the world. And we're all invited, as Semih said, and you can find details about this event, more details, on the WRI website. Now, they also need offers of accommodation in London for their guests. And if anyone here can help with that, please speak to Semih afterwards. Thank you. Lastly, the organizations behind this ceremony today need your support. As I mentioned at the start, this event is put together by a coalition of 13 peace organizations. They're listed in your programs, but I'm going to read out their names. The Anglican Pacifist Fellowship, Conscience, Fellowship of Reconciliation, the Movement for the Abolition of War, Network for Peace, Pax Christi, Peace and Justice Scotland, Peace News, Peace Pledge Union, Quaker Peace and Social Witness, the Right to Refuse to Kill Group, War Resisters International, and the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. It does cost a little money to put this event on, so if you can, please consider giving something towards our costs. We'd be most grateful. And if you're following online, you can use the donate link. And for those of you here in the square, there's a donations box over there near the table. So thank you all very much for coming today to Tavistock Square, London, and thank you all very much to those attending the ceremony online. And finally, please join me in thanking our speakers and musicians, Ali Ronan, Semih Sapmaz, Olga Karach, who couldn't be with us today, and Sue Gill-Murray and the Raised Voices Choir. Thank you, everyone. And it's Sue and the Raised Voices Choir who are going to play us out with a song called Road to Peace. Thank you, everyone. It's okay, yeah?
I think so. Should we gather around? Perhaps we'll just.
I'm going to move it again.
This is a very repetitive song. You haven't got it on your program. You haven't got it on your program, but it's a very simple song. We will put one foot in front of the other on the road to peace, on the road to peace. We will put one foot in front of the other, and together we shall arrive. And each verse is repeated like that. By the way, if any of you are interested in the singing or the songs, if you go to the Movement for the Abolition of War's website, which is abolishwar.net, they've got the music and the words of lots of, we actually got up to 18 in 2018. They've actually got the words and music for lots of peace songs. So you can find these and several others there. But for now, we're going to put one foot in front of the other on the road to peace. I can have an A. Right, now what else done?
We will put one foot in front of the other to peace. On the road to peace, we will put one foot in front of the other, and together we shall arrive. In front and for each other on the road to peace. On the road to peace, we will walk in hope and care for each other, and together we shall arrive. We will be free, find our fear and suspicion on the road to peace. On the road to peace, we will be free, find our fear and suspicion, and together we shall arrive. To trust and to be trusted on the road to peace. On the road to peace, we will learn and together we shall Old words and things that flavors on the road to peace. On the road to peace, we will meet. Reach that flavors and together we shall arrive. Each small step on getting closer on the road to peace. On the road to peace, and with each small step we all getting closer and together we shall arrive. We all put one foot in front of the other on the road to peace. On the road to peace.
Very much. Thank you.